Hiya peeps, I know it's dark, it's probably better like that, people can't see me as well. Incognito. This is about police corruption and the fact that during the lockdowns I had an accident in my car because of two men dancing in the road, on the only road in Blackpool probably with no cameras. They did everything they could to stop me passing and then created an argument, and I put my foot down. I was at a standstill. I put my foot down to get round them, and one of them decided to run, and I literally clipped him with my wing, doing about 18 miles an hour. Broke a little bone in his foot, grazed his back, and had a cut tongue, I think, when he landed on the floor, right there where I hit him. The witness statements were coerced by the copper, I was later told, by the guy that I hit, who turned out to be somebody that I knew. I'd done him 2 favours in the past and he knew who I was. I think his conscience got the better of him when he realised it was me, and he came and spoke to a friend of mine and got in touch with me, and I went and met him. I did him a few favours. I took him to the hospital. We had a lot of conversations about this. He finally admitted to me that he'd been bullied, coerced into this by one of his mates who does these scam things regularly, only apparently he normally does the 3-car trick, whatever that is. He was terrified of this guy. He did what he was told. And when I stopped after I'd hit him to get out and see if he was okay, I had a passenger as well with a broken hip. We both got out of the car. This guy was very abusive, verbally threatening, and I had to get back in my car. But I'd just seen the guy get up. There was no big deal. I hit him. I looked through my rear view mirror, and he was getting up. So, you know, I didn't injure him. I was going very slow. I got a solicitor who I fell out with over the mask wearing. Failed then to represent me using a lie that I'd texted him and told him I bought heroin for one of my witnesses. Well, I didn't have a witness, the guy in the car, but he didn't use heroin. What I'd actually said was that the guy that I hit phoned me up very late one night and asked me to buy some heroin for him. His friends were being threatening. They were trying to force me to sell tablets. They were abusive and frightening. I gave him a lot of money. All of this is on an audio video that I've got of the guy speaking, telling the truth about what happened. The police were very rude. They lied to me. They took my car under false pretences, said it was seized. They never told me it was seized. 5 weeks went by and I had a courtesy car. And then when he coerced the witnesses, the 2 witnesses, into saying that I was doing 50 mile an hour and I never looked back because they won't get any money if that's what unless that's what they said. That's what he said to him. He also told one of them, who was the one that I knew, that if he spoke to me again, he'd arrest him. Now, there was no court proceedings at the time. He simply, off his own bat, told this guy, if you speak to her again, I'm going to arrest you. And no disrespect to you, Jay, but he's not very bright, and he was frightened. And that was it. That stopped the contact between me and him. The copper then proceeded to charge me with 4 things: failing to stop, failing to report, and driving without due care and attention. Now, also in the audio video that I've got, the victim that I hit with my car says, I always said you stopped. I stopped twice actually, but he said, I always said you stopped. I told him you stopped further up the road because Beep was shouting at you. Now, I was threatened and chased away from the scene by the bigger guy who was the bully. Somebody that's been done with car theft, assaulting women. When I got his previous convictions, most of them were redacted. They were that bad. So God only knows. Car theft, all sorts on his record. So I knew what kind of person I was dealing with. But because of the recordings that I had, and I had many, until I went into the police station, and the ones that weren't backed up onto an SD card disappeared while I was in there. My Bluetooth was switched on and my files disappeared. Imagine that. I had made a video, actually, because I didn't believe that I was going to even be charged with anything because I'd done nothing wrong. At the time, I made a video and I put it on YouTube saying that I had all this evidence recorded, and I was specifically asked in a text to bring any evidence that I had any recordings, etc. when I went for my voluntary interview with my solicitor. What should have been a recorded interview took 45 minutes for them to turn the tape on, so they were definitely doing something. In fact, my solicitor said it's taking you an awfully long time to press a record button. What's the hold up? So they were removing me evidence whilst I was there. This is the big police station in Blackpool that's just been. It's like Star Trek in there. It's not a police station. It's futuristic, terrifying. God only knows what they can do. And so, police harassment, they came round 127 times. I became a political target because of my beliefs in the COVID, and it was specifically talking about the Wuhan outbreak, coinciding with the 5G rollout in Wuhan, which is where they put it first. People were dropping dead on the streets, if you remember, within a couple of weeks or months of them putting the first towers up. What, from a cold? Really? But radiation, SARS, severe acute radiation syndrome, gives you all the same symptoms as COVID. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. Anyway, I'm sure it's a coincidence. Yeah. I've got to be a bit careful and a bit clever about what I say, because otherwise this will never go where it's meant to. Yeah, police corruption. I've been to prison for a month during this lockdown because I couldn't get a solicitor to represent myself because of the bullshit that the first solicitor made up. So they didn't have to represent me because I had a big argument with one of his lawyers in the office. His wife had cancer and he believed that if I didn't wear a mask, I was going to kill his wife. And you can imagine what I said to him. So there was no way that they were going to represent me. And 8 solicitors down the line in Blackpool, all of whom I knew, wouldn't touch this with a barge pole. And when it came to the court date, I literally had to stand there and represent myself. I had the recording that should have just blown it right out of the court. The 3 people that were in there, the magistrates, were 75 if they were a day. They did not hear a fucking word of my recording. I was then faced with a prosecution lawyer, theirs, bombarding me with questions that I wasn't ready. I was flabbergasted. I could not believe I couldn't believe it. I always believed that justice would prevail in the end. I tried not to worry. It made me ill. I relapsed. I tried to kill myself in December with a massive heroin overdose because I just can't believe what's happened to me. I'm appealing this now and I can't lose. But police corruption in Blackpool is disgusting. That copper told these witnesses that I'm a drink driver. They believed that I hit a policeman in Lytham about 20 years ago and drove off. I was pulled in for it. I was living in a different town at the time. I had a different car. It wasn't me. But they believe to this day that I did that. So when this happened, it played right into their hands. They were already saying they were going to do me with inciting a riot for going on a park that I hadn't been on for 20 years at the time. They had a description of somebody and it had to be me, little black and white dog. Long red hair, which I didn't have at the time. It wasn't me at all. But yeah, 127 times. They stopped me 3 times and breathalyzed me in a month outside my house. I blew 0 every time. One of the coppers said, I've been to a funeral and had a few drinks the night before. And he said, are you an alcoholic? When I got in the back of it, I said, no, why do I look like one? He said, no, but you smell like one. Now, there was only me and him in the car. It was frightening. He got on the radio to a woman in front of me and said, "This is one to watch for later." I mean, and then they started to call round just under the guise of, "I would just come and see how you are." Just, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So yeah, it's destroyed my life. Literally, they've taken my car, my licence. I've been to prison for a thing I didn't do that was all made up, and I can prove it 100%. And now I'm gonna, my brain's back working the way that it was. I lost the plot during all this because I was facing it alone and couldn't get anybody to listen. They wouldn't even hear me but face to face because of the mask wearing, the lockdowns. I couldn't get anybody to help. And yeah, I ended up in prison, and they're going to pay, all of them. Love you lots, guys. Police corruption is real, believe me. Traffic police are bad, particularly bad, apparently because they put them on the road because they're not great with the public. And those of you that have met them will know that. So yeah, I'll keep you updated. Love you all. Bye. Bye.